It's time for The Verdict. The Verdict is a lively discussion of current events and legal issues pertinent to Oklahomans. The Verdict is hosted by Kent Myers and Mick Cornett. It's time for The Verdict.
Hello again and welcome to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. We're here every Sunday morning at 9 o'clock on KSBI. Glad you're joining us today for what I think will be a really interesting discussion, and I intend to walk away 30 minutes from now knowing a lot more than I do now.
Well, I do too, and I hope we're both able to do that. I think we will be. We're going to talk today on this show about stem cell research. That's a phrase that gets people's attention. It can get scientists' attention from the standpoint of what is possible through stem cell research. It can get other people who are worried about right to life, cloning, and the like, worried about what might be involved in embryonic stem cell research. We're going to talk about today just the science of stem cell research. We're not going to get into the controversy about what ought to be done, because we're going to do a second show where we do take up not simply the science of stem cell research, but the ethics and the propriety of embryonic stem cell research. That's not this Sunday. We're going to equip you this Sunday to know what we're going to be talking about next time.
The science of stem cell research today on The Verdict.
Heritage Hall, an independent college preparatory school. Here we celebrate our scientists, our athletes, our mathematicians, and our future artists.
Our students love to learn. A welcoming school for children aged 3 through grade 12. We are a community. We are a family. We are Heritage Hall.
Hi, I'm Leo with Graves Satellite, and I really want to install a satellite dish for you.
Well, maybe one of Leo's professional installers should finish this job. But Leo will ensure that you'll get the free satellite in 4 rooms, free installation, free digital video recorder in 2 rooms, and free HBO and Showtime for 3 months. Call Graves Satellite now, because this offer may not last.
Is your garage overflowing, workshop messy, backyard cluttered? Call Backyard Builders for your storage solution today. Backyard Builders sells quality storage buildings at competitive prices. Call or drop by at either convenient location and let them give you a quote today. Backyard Builders has a great selection of buildings that you can customize, and Backyard Builders will personally install your building on site. Backyard Builders is located in Midwest City at Southeast 29th and Douglas, and at their newest location in Bethany, just 1 block west of Rockwell on Northwest 39th Street. If you're looking for more space, call or come by Backyard Builders today.
Join us at Shawnee Mall on Friday, July 29th for the Colgate Country Showdown. Hurry, entry deadline is Tuesday, July 26th. Each entry guarantees a performance on stage. Competition starts at 9 a.m. The finals concert starts at 7 p.m. We'll see you there.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers, and Kent's going to introduce today's guest.
Today, we're very pleased to welcome to the set of The Verdict Dr. Jim Tomasek. Dr. Tomasek is the Dean of the Graduate College at the OU Health Sciences Center and is also a Presidential Professor of Cell Biology. He obtained his undergraduate degree, a Bachelor of Science in Biology from the University of Illinois. He obtained his Ph.D. from the State University of New York at Albany. He then did 3 years of postdoctoral studies at the Harvard Medical School. And then eventually in 1988, we were able to lure him to Oklahoma to the OU Health Sciences Center, where he has been ever since. He has won numerous teaching awards as well as written scholarly articles. He's going to talk to us today about the science of stem cells. Dr. Tomasek, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start with the discussion on regenerative medicine. And really, the stem cells, from a research point of view, when did we start thinking that they had something to offer? Obviously, this science evolved to where it is today. When did it first come forward, and what's the history?
Well, started using stem cells for clinical uses and such about 30 years ago with bone marrow, the blood stem cells. And embryonic stem cells really started to find out and use these about 20 years ago with mice. And it was just in 1998 that they've been able to isolate human embryonic stem cells. Now, it's been clear that the embryonic stem cells are what gives rise to the embryo during development. So as I said, about 20 years ago, they really started working with mouse embryonic stem cells, and it wasn't until 1998 that we isolated human embryonic stem cells.
Okay. Morality aside, why do we care about stem cells? What do they have to offer?
Sure. Currently with regenerative medicine, if there's sick or ailing tissues or organs, really all we can do is do organ replacement, which has the problems with numbers of organs as well as rejection issues. Or we can try to use various types of engineered models, such as the artificial knees or artificial hips and such. The whole idea with stem cells is to be able to have a population of cells that can repair and replace these altered organs or tissues so that they can really be replaced by normal types of cells.
And so it offers hope for what, organ transplants?
Well, it's going to be hope for a number of things. So for example, if you've the diabetes, to replace the insulin-secreting pancreatic islet cells, hopefully stem cells can produce those. In terms of spinal cord injuries, can help heal the spinal cord and get those to regenerate. If you've got cardiac problems, heart problems, hopefully to replace the injured heart muscle.
Well, I don't want to dominate the conversation here, but you brought something up. Okay, let's say it was some sort of paralysis, and you were thinking of stem cell research.
Like Chris Reeves.
Okay, perfect example. The actor who had the horseback riding accident. Would you need the stem cell from him, or would you be able to take it from an embryonic stem cell or another person, another adult?
Right. Well, actually, if you take you have the problem with rejection if the genetic makeup of the stem cells is not the same as the individual you're putting them into. So if you take embryonic stem cells from the embryos, let's say from in vitro fertilization clinics that everyone is talking about now, and if we took and put that into an individual, let's say Chris Reeves, and the genotype wasn't the same, you could have rejection problems. That's one of the reasons why people are interested in what's called therapeutic cloning or somatic cell nuclear transfer as a way to generate embryonic stem cells that have the genetic makeup the same as the patient.
If he were involved in the fertilization, would it decrease the chances of rejection?
Well, if he was involved in the fertilization, 50% of the genetic makeup would be his and 50% would be from the female.
So it wouldn't help enough?
Right,
okay.
Right. It would help, but wouldn't be the same.
Well, and we've seen Nancy Reagan on television talking about stem cell research, particularly with Alzheimer's, I guess. Would it have some promise there?
Sure. And the idea, again, is if you had stem cells that could generate the cells that produce, that could repair and replace the neurons that were damaged in the brain due to Alzheimer's, you could potentially repair that kind of disease as well.
You've been in this how many years now?
Well, I've been teaching embryology for over 20 years and also involved in research which makes use of embryonic stem cells in terms of making knockout mice and various mouse models.
So stem cell research, I suppose, as a science, has a great promise to bring about cures or possible solutions for things we haven't been able to address before.
Right, right.
Go ahead.
What's the difference between adult and embryonic stem cells?
Okay, and that's a very good question because there's a lot of confusion about those two issues. And really the major difference between the two is their potentiality. And that is embryonic stem cells come from the 5-day-old embryo. And the cells that give rise to the embryonic stem cells are the ones that give rise to the whole embryo. They form all of the tissues and organs that you're going to form in the adult. So they have the potential, under the proper conditions, to form anything. So let's say you've got embryonic stem cells and you want to form a heart. If we worked out the conditions right, we could form a heart from those. If we wanted to form, let's say, the insulin-secreting islet cells, if you put those under the proper conditions, you should form that. So from embryonic stem cells...
What about the knee tissue or cartilage?
Any tissue can form from embryonic stem cells. They have the complete potentiality to form any of those. In fact, as we'll talk about, the embryonic stem cells come from the cells in the embryo that form all of these tissues and organs. Now, adult stem cells come from the adult. And that means that these stem cells come from stem cells that are present in the tissue or the organ. So they are programmed to give rise to the cells to replace injured cells and tissues in that specific organ or tissue. So for example, if you have skeletal muscle that's injured, there's stem cells in skeletal muscle, and they'll form and replace the injured skeletal muscle. Everybody's probably familiar with the blood stem cells that are present in bone marrow. Those continuously produce the blood cells that you need. But with adult cells, they form those specific cell types that you see in the adult. So their potentiality is limited. Now, if you had talked to me 5 years ago, that's where we would have left it. More recent evidence has suggested that adult stem cells do have more potentiality than what we thought. So for example, some of the blood stem cells seem to be able to form bone and cartilage, which is not what they normally do. There's evidence that they can go in more ways than what we thought. However, most scientists would believe that adult stem cells have nowhere near the potentiality as embryonic stem cells do.
How widespread is the use of adult stem cells now?
Really, the only clinical use for adult stem cells is for the blood stem cells. So for leukemias and lymphomas and such. And one thing I should mention, and that is there's a lot of confusion about cord blood stem cells. So there's a lot of talk of using cord blood stem cells.
Now, cord blood, you mean the umbilical cord?
So umbilical cord, right.
Okay.
So at the time of birth, you can obtain blood from the umbilical cord and isolate stem cells from that blood. Mm-hmm. It turns out that the stem cells that you're isolating are the same stem cells as are present in the bone marrow. It turns out that during development and in the infant, that you've got these blood stem cells circulating in the blood system, which is why you can isolate those. However, with development, they home to the bone marrow, and that's where you find them in adults. So that's why you don't find these circulating stem cells in adults. But the cord blood stem cells really are adult stem cells. So they're the analogous to the adult blood cells, stem cells you find in the bone marrow.
Let me jump in here and get us to our first break. We're visiting with Dr. James Tomasek. We're discussing stem cell research and the science involving stem cell research. We'll be right back on The Verdict.
The Journal-Record is pleased to be a sponsor of The Verdict. The Journal-Record, since 1903, the best source of Oklahoma business news and legal information.
Enzymatic Therapy's national educator Cheryl Myers will lecture on renewing your vitality and women's health at all life stages, Tuesday the 26th at the Health Food Center.
Why are these doctors different? Because their knowledge is what powerful minds are made of. Minds of specialists making us feel like ourselves again, as if all the pieces of us are a mystery only they can solve. Minds of scholars and scientists who are teaching tomorrow's doctors, because they are 400 powerful minds with one thing on their mind: you. They're OU physicians. That's powerful medicine.
The Churches of Christ of Central Oklahoma invite you to watch our TV program, Let the Bible Speak, each Sunday morning at 8 a.m.
That land next door was a mess. Take more than a lawnmower to revive that land. I heard the oil and natural gas people was cleaning up old oil sites, and it wouldn't cost us a plug nickel. Oh, yes, sir, it was quite a revival. The whole church showed up, want to make a playground for the kids. It sure is a blessing.
Tell us about your success story. 5 years ago, my traditional business went bankrupt. I started a home-based business, and now I'm earning over $500,000 a year. The home business market is booming. There's never been a better time to start enjoying the benefits of working from home. I went to this website, filled in my information, and their unique system referred me to an incredible opportunity.
As a single mother, it's important for me to be able to work at home and still make enough money to provide the best education for my children.
Paul and his wife bought a new home, Doug a new car, and vacations at the lake. And they all got started with the help of this free service. If you're considering a home business, this is the one website you need to visit.
I started my home business less than a year ago, and already I'm up to $5,000 a month.
I make over $7,000 a month working in my spare time.
My goal for next year is $50,000 a month. Create your own success story. Log on to this website and get started today.
Log on to 23future.com and create your own success story. Log on to 23future.com and get started now.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett. We're discussing stem cell research and all of the science that goes along with stem cell regenerative medicine. And we have Dr. James Tomasek from the OU Health Sciences Center here with us today. Ken?
Dr. Tomasek, in the first segment we talked about stem cells and what they did and what they can do. How do you obtain stem cells? Sure. Embryonic stem cells. Let's focus on that.
Embryonic stem cells. Well,
I'll tell you what, pardon me. Let's call up a graphic, if we can, and let Dr. Tomasek talk from the graphic about how to obtain the embryonic stem cells.
So, as you can see here, this is a diagram of the female reproductive system, and embryonic stem cells are obtained from the 5-day blastocysts. Now, how this occurs is once a month, a woman is going to ovulate an egg that's released from the ovary. This enters into the uterine tube. You can see the tube running from the left to the right across the screen. If there's sperm present, fertilization will occur. And with the fertilization, then the what's referred to as the zygote will begin dividing, forming multiple cells. And as it passes along through the uterine tube, it'll continue dividing and enter into the uterine cavity, which is on the right side at about the 4th day in development. By the 5th day of development, the blastocyst forms, and this is a hollow ball of cells, about 200 cells. You can think of this as a tennis ball. The outer wall of cells will form the membranes that protect the embryo during development and the fetus, and inside that is a group of cells that will give rise to the embryo proper and form all the tissues and organs of the embryo. And these are the cells that, when isolated, are the embryonic stem cells that you can grow in culture. And that's why they have this potential, as they give rise to the complete embryo.
So the embryonic stem cells are in the internal part of the blastocyst.
Right, right. And the other thing is, realize the blastocyst forms 5 days after fertilization. It's still floating in the uterine tube. It has not yet attached to the uterine wall. There's no real structural organization to it. And in fact, these the cells that will form the embryo really do not start reorganizing into the embryo until the end of the 2nd week of development. So this is 5 days after fertilization. That's 14 days after fertilization. Okay. Now, the question is, how do you get the blastocyst in order to obtain these embryonic stem cells? And this really came from in vitro fertilization. So if we go to the next graphic, this is going to be an overview of in vitro fertilization. And what's done is, again, the egg is obtained from the woman. However, in this case,
we're looking at the left side of the graphic, with the sperm and the egg.
So you obtain the egg by treating the woman with a regimen of hormones. Normally, she only releases 1 egg per month. Under this condition, she'll release anywhere from 10 to 20 eggs. You go in surgically and collect those eggs from the ovary, put those inside a dish, mix those with sperm, and fertilization will occur. And just like we talked about that occurs in the uterine tube, the same thing happens in the dish. The zygote that's formed from fertilization, as you can see in the middle there, now will divide multiple times, and by 5 days after fertilization will form the blastocyst, which is the round structure you see there. Those outer cells then are going to form the membranes. The inner group of cells are what's going to form the embryo, like we talked about. Now, if you take the blastocyst and put that in the uterus, implantation can occur and a pregnancy can occur. Now, normally, only 2 to 3 blastocysts are put into the uterus. Now, as I said, you have 10 to 20 eggs that you retrieve, and usually most of those will fertilize, so you've got more blastocysts formed than you put into the uterus. And those extra blastocysts then are frozen. So if the woman doesn't get pregnant, you can thaw out another 2 to 3 blastocysts, put those in the uterus to get another pregnancy.
And that's the way you get the embryonic stem cells.
Well, the way in which you get embryonic stem cells then is, let's say if the woman has had the number of children she wants, and that there are some blastocysts remaining. If the couple agrees to donate those for research, what can be done then is you thaw the blastocysts and then isolate the embryonic stem cells from those blastocysts that you've thawed out.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, what we really haven't touched on is cloning. I don't think we can use the cloning word, but I think a lot of people think, well, they're almost interchangeable. Are they interchangeable, and how do you differentiate, and what does cloning involve?
Okay. So the process that we've talked about with in vitro fertilization is just what normally would go on in the reproductive tract. So you have the sperm and egg mixing together. You just do this in a dish. You grow it for 5 days and then put it in the uterus. And therapeutic cloning or somatic cell nuclear transfer has a very different part. And if we look at this graphic here, what you're going to see is, again, just like with in vitro fertilization, an egg is retrieved, so you can see on the left side. However, what's done is you remove the nuclear material from that egg. So you remove the nucleus. So that means the DNA is taken out. And you fuse the egg with an adult cell. So for example, if you've got an individual who, let's say, has a heart problem and you want to try and get cardiac tissue that matches their genetic makeup, you obtain one of their cells and you fuse that with the egg. That egg now contains the genetic material that's identical to that individual.
Okay, so there's no fertilization.
No fertilization. No new genotype is formed, which is normally what occurs in fertilization. The genotype is identical to the individual you took that cell from. Okay? Once they fuse together, the egg is stimulated now to go ahead and develop just like it would as the fertilization occurred. So we form a structure similar to the zygote. It undergoes cleavage or numbers of cell division, forms a blastocyst.
Okay, so that's the blastocyst is what we see there at the,
on the right side
end of that
there.
line of arrows.
Yeah.
And then it goes down.
So then what you can do is, just like we talked about, you can isolate from that blastocyst embryonic stem cells. Now the embryonic stem cells then that are isolated are identical to the individual you took that cell from.
So is this blastocyst the same as the other blastocyst you were talking about earlier?
Right, yes, so that's the same. Now, this is the way in which therapeutic cloning is done, and the reason for doing this is that now you've got stem cells that match the genotype of the patient.
Which
so if you
cuts down on rejection.
Right, that's the whole reason for this. If you take embryonic stem cells from the in vitro fertilization blastocyst we talked about, the genotype would not match the patient. Now, the one thing about cloning, and that is that this is therapeutic cloning, then there's reproductive cloning. And what reproductive cloning would entail then is take the blastocyst and now put it back into a uterus. As you said, it's the same blastocyst as what you'd normally get, except the genotype is different because we haven't had fertilization. If we take and put this back in the uterus, and in fact, that's the way Dolly was cloned. So they took the blastocyst and put it back into the uterus of the sheep, and it developed and formed now a clone. So they've managed to clone a number of animals. So they've cloned sheep, they've cloned mice, they've cloned rabbits, they've cloned cats and such. And the real concern is with humans, could you potentially clone a human from this technology? Most scientists now would believe you cannot clone a human. And the reason for that is that during development and formation of the sperm and the egg, there's changes in the DNA that occurs that's essential for the normal development to occur later on. And since we don't have fertilization, you don't have normal sperm and egg meeting here, so it's doubtful in humans that you're going to be able to do reproductive cloning. And in fact, they've tried to reproductively clone non-human primates and have never been successful. But I think it's very critical to realize that the difference is with therapeutic cloning is that you stop at the blastocyst and get the embryonic stem cells, and reproductive cloning, the goal is to clone an individual.
At this point, there's doubt that primates in general could be cloned.
Right, yes.
Just in the brief time we have left, where do we stand today on the use of adult stem cells and embryonic stem cells?
There's been a number of animal models looking at stem cells, both adult and embryonic stem cells, and some very encouraging results from both. They've actually had a diabetic mouse model that they've used mouse embryonic stem cells, that they've created insulin-secreting cells and have somewhat ameliorated the diabetic condition. There's a rat model where they've cut the spinal cord on the rat, and the hind limbs then are totally paralyzed. If they inject human embryonic stem cells that they've differentiated into a specific supporting neuronal cell type, they can actually get a lot of the motion back in these animals, so the nerves seem to be able to regenerate. In terms of humans, the only clinical use is the blood stem cells, which people know about for leukemias and lymphomas and such. There's been no clinical trials done with embryonic stem cells for adults or for humans. So hopefully in the near future we're going to be able to be doing embryonic stem cells with humans, but we'll see.
We're going to have to jump in there and call it to a halt. We've been discussing the science of embryonic research, stem cell research, cloning, lots of other things. And as Kent mentioned at the beginning of the show, on a future show, we'll be talking about the morality involved in all of this. Thank you very much for spending your time with us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Kent and I'll have a final word when we get back. American Express Tax and Business Services. We're accountants. We do taxes, business valuations, estate planning, and consulting. And we're right here in Oklahoma, working with the owners of small and medium-sized businesses. Steve Wilsey and Stuart Meyer have the resources and the experience. American Express Tax and Business Services. In Oklahoma City, the phone number is 405-843-5311.
Is your garage overflowing, workshop messy, backyard cluttered? Call Backyard Builders for your storage solution today. Backyard Builders sells quality storage buildings at competitive prices. Call or drop by at either convenient location and let them give you a quote today. Backyard Builders has a great selection of buildings that you can customize, and Backyard Builders will personally install your building on site. Backyard Builders is located in Midwest City at Southeast 29th and Douglas, and at their newest location in Bethany, just 1 block west of Rockwell on Northwest 39th Street. If you're looking for more space, call or come by Backyard Builders today.
All children deserve a life of hope and love, but sometimes they experience a life of pain, neglect, and abuse.
When that happens, each child deserves all the quality assistance and representation that can be offered in our legal system. For more information, call 23-CHILD.
Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, helping to bring hope and love back to the lives of abused children.
I am so tired of overpaying for health insurance.
Wow, I pay a lot less, and that covers me and my family.
If you're self-employed or an individual looking for affordable health insurance for yourself and your family, do what I did. Call the Mega Life and Health Insurance Company for a free quote.
I got individual attention from a licensed Mega agent who helped me tailor a plan to match my needs and was way more than affordable.
I got great coverage at a great rate, and I could choose my own doctor on my own or from the network.
Now get this. You're covered 24/7 whether you're on the job, at home, or anywhere in the world. So, do what I did.
Call the Mega Life and Health Insurance Company for your free quote. You have absolutely no obligation except the one to yourself, your family, and your business.
Call 800-306-6359 for your free Mega Affordable Health Insurance quote. Call 800-306-6359.
Welcome back to the set of The Verdict. Mick Cornett with Kent Myers. And Kent, we learned a lot today.
We did. I'm glad we don't have to take a test on it, but I think we could perhaps pass it.
We got a whole semester in 30 minutes.
We did. We did. It went fast. Dr. Tomasek was very kind to come join us and talk about the science of stem cell research, as we've been careful to point out both at the beginning and now at the end. This is not the show where we talk about should it be done, should embryonic stem cell research be employed. This is just how it's done and what scientifically happens in the process. We do want to reserve to another show the ethics or morality of embryonic stem cell research, and in that show we're going to have somebody from each side saying yes, it should be done, no, it shouldn't be done, and each giving their reasons, and then it'll be up to you to register your verdict on our website about whether you think it ought to happen or not.
And that website address is theverdict.tv. Go there and talk about any type of show that you'd like to see on an upcoming edition. For Kent Myers, I'm Mick Cornett. We'll see you next week on The Verdict.